Somewhere out there in a podcast-lit apartment stacked with empty takeout boxes and Jordan Peterson hardcovers, a lonely Republican man is wondering why no one loves him. And I want to be kind, God help me, I do, but it's hard because this epidemic of male loneliness on the right, it's not about politics. It's not about masculinity being under attack or that feminism ruined the dance. It's because they keep trying to court women that only exist in campaign ads and TikTok thirst traps made for profit. These men are chasing an idea of womanhood that doesn't exist anywhere outside a screen or a fantasy. Some hyper-submissive, Bible-toting, Instagram-polished Stepford Barbie who votes red, never talks back, and thinks empathy is a liberal plot to weaken men. They mock liberal women like they're the enemy of happiness, like liberal is some character flaw, as if a woman who believes in health care, bodily autonomy, and civil rights is somehow a threat. As if the things that make women radiant, kindness, curiosity, imagination, empathy, are liabilities. They sneer at emotional intelligence like it's weakness because it terrifies them. Because they know somewhere deep in that fragile chest that love is an act of vulnerability, and they haven't been vulnerable since they were 12 years old and someone told them to stop crying. So let me be clear. Loneliness is real, pain is real, and men across the country are struggling with isolation, depression, and the ache of not feeling needed. But the solution isn't fantasy, and it isn't rage, and it damn sure isn't doubling down on power games that were rigged from the start. Women are not rewards for loyalty to a political party. Love is not a campaign strategy, and that the problem isn't that women have changed, it's that you haven't. The women you've written off, they are glorious, not in the billboard way, not in the likes per post kind of way, but in the way a field of sunflowers is glorious, resilient, radiant, and unapologetically alive. So if you want to be loved, be worth loving, not with a six-pack or a sermon, but with kindness, with truth, with a terrifying, liberating act of being real. And if you can't do that, if you'd rather stay in an echo chamber and double down on the fantasy and chase cartoon women through an algorithm built by men who hate you, then by all means, be lonely. But don't blame women for it. Defiance till death.
Hi, I'm Jenny, and I'm going to say something today that might ruffle a couple of camo-covered feathers. Here it is. I would never, and I mean never, ever, date another MAGA man for as long as I lived. So help me, Oprah. I've been sharing my story about breaking up with MAGA, but I feel like I'm leaving out a really big component, and it's time to bring back Jake. Today we're going to go a little bit deeper. Today we're going to get personal. Today we're going to dig into my romantic life, because behind every blonde, doe-eyed tradwife baking sourdough in her little Mormon-y prairie dress, there's a bearded traditional husband with a closet full of camo and cowboy hats, a truck full of conspiracy theories, and a Bible that he really only dusts off when he wants to look in there to see what God wants you to be doing. And today I want to introduce you to Jake, the man I spent 24 way too long years with. The man who taught me why exactly no amount of charm, masculinity, or provider energy is worth sacrificing your freedom, your voice, or your soul by dating one of these. Buckle up, ladies, because once you hear these stories, I promise, you will never look at a beard in a lifted truck again, especially if that truck's flying a big ol' American flag. You won't think his tractor is sexy. You'll see that as a red flag.
Ready on the set? Let's try this again.
I'm Jenny Gage, and this is Life Take Two. Thanks for watching, and I know there's tons of great stuff out there on YouTube, and I'm really flattered that you stopped on my video. So I've been sharing my MAGA life with you and a little bit of a behind-the-scenes peek into who I was just a few years ago. I left MAGA as a 48-year-old woman. I left my church and my religious community as a 44-year-old woman. I'm now a almost 51-year-old grandma, and I'm living a very different life than what I previously did. And since I have so many newbies here who haven't been on TikTok with me for the past 6 years, I think it's time I introduce you to Mr. MAGA. This is Jake. Jake grew up in Arkansas. I grew up in a poor but educated family from Scottsdale, Arizona. I sang opera and spoke Russian, subscribed to the Wall Street Journal in college, and Jake was literally running around in the country hunting squirrels. Jake and I lived on the other side of the country from each other. So how did our paths ever cross? How did I meet Prince Charming? Church, of course. I'll save the full story on that for another video. Jake and I were married in the Mormon Temple in 1995, and we were married for 24 years and raised 4 kids together. So here's some things about my ultra-conservative husband that were so awful that they ruined my life and were so bad I'll never date one of these guys again. Number 1. Jake was all about traditional gender roles, like old school, biblical. And yes, I grew up Mormon and I grew up in a very traditionally gendered family, but Jake coming from the South where it was like even more gendered and more sexist and misogynistic than my Arizona and Portland Mormon upbringing was kind of a shock to me. Everything was just very pink and blue. He expected me to be a traditional wife from jump. So as a 20-year-old girl, I would wake up 30 minutes before him and starch and iron his white shirts that he had to wear for his sales job, and then pack his lunch and make his breakfast. And then I would get ready and go to my job. We both had jobs, but I was the one who got up and did all that. Like, that was what I had to do. I remember his mom coming to visit one time and really just already feeling the stress of these pink and blue jobs and how I was basically his servant at that point, and it was really starting to stress me out. So his mom was in town and I just mentioned to her, like after dinner one night, I was like, Jake never helps cook and he never clears his place at the table and he doesn't help me with the dishes or putting away any of the food or anything. And his little Southern mama looked me dead in the eye and she said, he's the husband. Why would he do any of that? That's your job. And I had never been to her house before, but then when I finally went to her house, she acted like a waitress at the table, like she was working at Cracker Barrel or something. And while the men just sat at the table, she would literally get up and get the salt and pepper and refill their milk and get them more mashed potatoes and whatever. And I was also expected to do the same. Number 2 thing about my super ultra churchy conservative husband, I just have this one entitled Guns, Guns, Guns. I mean, I did enjoy the venison and he also fished. So I enjoyed having the fresh fish. We'd go to Hawaii and he'd deep sea fish and bring home Ono and things like that. Living off the land and self-reliance are still things that I value very much. But one year, he did not have a job at all. He decided not to work for an entire year. We had no money coming in. We were just burning through our savings. And he did it in part so that he could just hunt, because he joined a really good deer camp. We were living in Arkansas at the time. He was so busy prepping for hunting, like washing his clothes and spraying himself down with deer pee and things like that. And then sitting out at the deer camp from the crack of dawn until he finally got something all day long, that's all he had time for. He spent all our money on guns, bows, 4-wheelers to get to the back of the hunting camp with. And it was so much money. And just the obsession with guns, like he had to watch hours and hours of TV shows of people with their guns and movies. He ordered some gun magazine at one point. I don't even know what it was called. And coincidentally, the day our marriage ended, he threatened to use one of the 16 of them that he had in our master closet on me. So that's always a big risk with these guys. Number 3, education wasn't his forte, shall we say. I remember our first date asking him his favorite author, and he told me he'd only read one book in his life. And I think it was To Kill a Mockingbird, but I could be wrong on that. He said all he needed was the Bible and the Book of Mormon. Now, this, again, was not his fault, as he was indoctrinated in the same cult as me. So childhood indoctrination, he grew up in this. But I'm just saying, it wasn't a good thing. By the way, Jake does read books now. I kind of got him hooked on them. So these guys are trainable. By the way, after my divorce, when I was dating, you had to have a college degree. And I actually put on my dating profiles, please tell me the last 5 books that you read and send me photographic proof. The Audible screenshot, the actual book on your nightstand. He scarred me. Number 4, the country music. No offense, country music. But I feel like it should be part of the playlist and not necessarily the whole thing. Like nobody should spend their whole life singing about rolling down the windows and cruising down the road with a girl in a bikini up in their truck. You know, at a certain point when you're like 40, 50, then we should have a little bit more diversity than that. Like grow up. Kevin's playlist, by the way, my partner now, love of my life, is so stunning. Ben Platt, Hamilton, Simon and Garfunkel, classic Steven Tyler stuff, which I really appreciate. Madonna from the 90s. And then he has like Andrea Bocelli. And yes, Kev's a church boy, so he's got his praise music in the mix too. Number 5, financial control. Again, gender roles, but like it's such a thing to lean into provider role with these guys. That is a big part of MAGA, is the traditional family financial structure. So here's what that looked like for us. For the first few years of our marriage, I had a job too, but then as soon as I had a baby, for religious reasons, I stopped working. I became a tradwife. And one day, Jake asked me for all of my receipts so he could balance the checkbook, and he blew up at me because I had overspent on diapers and formula and gas and groceries and things like that. So the next day, he went to the bank and he opened up his own bank account, and the two of us would never share a bank account again for 24 years of marriage. So what he did for the majority of our marriage is anytime I needed to buy anything, he would just give me a little envelope with some cash. So if I was going to Walmart, I would tell him I need some cash for Walmart, and he would just ask me to estimate. And I'd estimate, like $80, and he'd give me $80. And if I got to Walmart and I spent $90 and I had to take something off the conveyor belt. Now, mind you, we were living in $1 million houses. We had luxury vehicles. We were spending summers in Maui. We had boats and all the guns and all the stuff. And I was constantly stressed out with cash. Now, eventually, Jake would get me a debit card, and he just gave me an allowance every month. That allowance started off at $500 a month. And if I spent all of my money, then that was just that. I couldn't ask for more. And again, we had so much money. This was just a way for him to control me. And because of the financial control, I was stuck in domestic violence for 24 years because I had no way to leave. And let me tell you, when I was dating conservative guys after my divorce, all of them were exactly the same. I am the provider. You don't need to work. I'll make the money, but then I also get to make the decisions about the money, et cetera, et cetera. Jake once sold a house without asking me, and the realtor just came over, sat down in our kitchen, had me sign all the papers. I was bawling my eyes out. I didn't make decisions like that. It wasn't my money. Number 5, making babies. But then that's pretty much it. Like, again, the traditional family, just like that picture of Americana and the picket fence and all the kids standing in front of the picket fence. Jake was like obsessed with getting me pregnant and just basically collecting babies, but he never changed diapers. He didn't do anything. And he has been the ultimate deadbeat ex-husband. I'll post a video in the description of this one about how me and my kids, Jake's children, were homeless after our marriage ended, after he left me for another woman. And my YouTube followers are helping pay for Brody's orthodontics right now with the super chats because my ex-husband will not pay the deposit for his own child to get his braces on. He has never paid for school supplies. He had kids just to look cool. He wanted the dad vibe without getting his hands dirty. There's something about conservative men that most of them want these big old families, but it's going to be your job to take care of the kids. It's biblical, or so they say. Okay, number 7 is hatred of marginalized people. Again, not Jake's fault because he was raised like I was. Our church taught us this. But man, he hated gay people, illegals, and I do say that in air quotes if you're not watching. That is not a word that I like at all. He hated women. He hated non-Mormons. Jake is Christian now, and it's funny because he's always judging on me now for rejecting Jesus. I don't know. He always has to have somebody to look down on. It's so funny. And I could never date another MAGA guy because I actually care about those on the periphery. Just about 40 minutes ago, had lunch with a homeless man. He's actually a trans, homeless, drug addicted Mexican. And my family supports him. He's 25 years old. If you'd ever like to donate to support KT, who I'm helping to rehabilitate, I took him to Culver's and I sat down and bought him a burger and ate lunch with him today. I actually care about people. Okay, number 8. God is my everything, while also being an asshole. Jake was cheating on me and never missed a day of church. Jake was a jerk. He never missed a day of church. And not that like all MAGA men are cheaters, not that they're jerks. But here's the thing, and we got to be honest about this. If you support mass deportations while praising Jesus, no. Hard pass. If you support the stuff that Trump's White House is doing, then your God sucks and so do you. My list originally started out as like 20 points with things like not caring about recycling, not caring about the use of fossil fuels, not believing in evolution. Like there's just so much stuff. But I feel like this is the basics. These are the deal breakers that would keep me from ever dating MAGA boy again. I'd love to hear from you. Are there a few things that you'd add to the list? Or do you disagree with me entirely? I'll be hanging out in the comments. Thanks for watching.